Loving thy neighbour is easier said than done.
Yes, they nearly got me arrested.
Oh, it's completely taken over my life.
Really?
I'm being intimidated by my neighbours.
Give me my dog!
You bitch!
I'm calling the police right now.
When the garden fence marks enemy lines,
Have you got your recorder on?
Yeah, I have.
your home life can turn into a living hell.
What do you mean of you? What the hell's the matter with you?
Coming up, when a pensioner terrorises the street, violence erupts.
If he was a slug, I would put salt round him so he explodes.
An army veteran is at war with his police neighbours.
I picked up this camera and swung it.
And a neighbour's extension turns into a nightmare.
Nobody's going to want to buy this house looking at that monstrosity next door to us.
Many people dream of retiring to the suburbs for peace and quiet. Some residents of this street were hoping for just that, but it's not what they got.
It's hard living here because every time you come out of your house, he's there. Every time you go to your car, he's there.
He was a bully, and he bullied everybody he possibly could.
Retired TV engineer Roger Coleman and his wife Barbara moved into this quiet Suffolk village in 2006.
Little Blakenham is a very tiny village, and it's basically just a square of bungalows. And this is why we like it, because we've got no through traffic. It was nice and quiet.
But little did they know, the village was in the middle of a conflict that had been raging for years. And at the centre of it all was 71-year-old Michael Keane, who'd lived there for 25 years.
The previous owners came back to see us and said, how are you doing? How are you settling down? And we said, fine. And then he actually warned me, whatever you do, don't have anything to do with Mr. Keane. He's trouble. Other neighbours began to tell us that over the years, he had been antisocial to other neighbours in our small community. So from that on, we were very wary of him.
For 15 years, Jane Hervey and her family had lived 3 doors down from Michael Keane. She claims to have had trouble with him since day one.
He sees us coming and then comes out and shouts abuse over the fence at us. And the language that come out is disgusting.
And according to Jane, it's not just the verbal abuse that she and her neighbours have to put up with.
Mr. Keane has a leaf blower. He uses it all the time. It's pathetic. There was no leaves on the floor, and he would have it on for an hour sometimes, just to annoy us neighbours. Any little thing he can do to wind anybody up, he does it.
It became clear that Roger and Barbara's dream home was on a street with a very real problem. Sick of the verbal abuse Jane said she was getting from Michael Keane, she came over to visit. She'd been logging Mr. Keane's actions for years in a bid to get the police to take her claims seriously.
Jane came and saw me that she'd been advised by the police that the diary that she'd filled up with all the abuse wasn't really sufficient, that you needed either a video or audio evidence so they could do, that's the only way they could do anything. So I put a camera, which is this camera here, in our windowsill, and just to see whether he was going to continue to shout this abuse.
Roger had the perfect view of the front of Michael Keane's house. All he had to do was hit record.
I was sitting in the chair over here, watching England play Australia in the cricket.
Roger had set the video camera running in his window, which caught the attention of Michael Keane. But little did he know, Michael had walked out of his property, down his driveway, and was heading towards his house.
And suddenly, in front of this window here, I saw a face looking through the window, and then a camera taking a picture of this camera. And straight away I recognised it as Mr. Keane. and slowly he walked back towards his property. And I went out after him to see what he was up to.
Roger wasn't the only resident to spot Mr. Keane.
I was sitting here watching TV, then all of a sudden I saw Roger walk down his driveway and started walking towards Mr. Keane. I thought to myself, I can't let him go out on his own. All of a sudden, Mr. Keane started walking towards the road.
I walked towards him, so did Jane. And as we all walked towards him, he went backwards as fast as he could. Jane got there first.
I walked towards him, he came towards me. And then he says, egg me on to come to his driveway. Come on in front of my driveway. I followed him on his driveway and I was telling him, just leave us alone. What is your problem? Just leave us alone.
But what happened next wasn't what anyone could have imagined. Years of tension had reached boiling point, but Michael Keane had only just begun. Coming up, a pensioner wages war.
Their behaviour is completely out of order.
And a home is on shaky ground.
It is actually dug underneath our foundation.
Roger Coleman and his wife Barbara had moved to Suffolk for a quiet life. But when his neighbour Jane asked him to set up a camera pointing at his neighbour Michael Keane's house, trouble had erupted.
And I said, look what you've just done to me. You've assaulted me.
And she's still saying, when are you going to stop all this abuse? Bang, get off my property, hit her again. Absolutely disgusting.
A neighbour phoned the police. But Michael Keane wasn't going to stop there.
I'm shouting out to Jane, come on, don't go anywhere near him, come away. You've got 2 witnesses, he's hit you, that's good enough.
Then his wife came out, telling me to get off her property.
Bang, hit her again. How she managed to stay on her feet, I don't know. To hit a woman like that was absolutely disgusting.
When the police arrived, Michael Keane was arrested and interviewed under caution. But the chaos of that summer afternoon had rocked the small community.
Afterwards, I'm thinking, oh my God, what had just happened? I can't believe he'd just done this to me.
Barbara was quite concerned for herself and for Jane.
How could you do that to that lady? How could you?
It was appalling, absolutely disgusting and appalling what he did to me. So we think, right, okay, I'm going to get this guy. He's got to be punished for this.
Michael Keane appeared in court 7 weeks later with 1 charge of assault. He pleaded guilty. But the outcome wasn't quite what the neighbours had hoped for.
He was sent home with no restrictions. To assault a woman like that, he should have been put inside and done some time in prison. For Jane and all the other neighbours here, that was soul destroying.
He didn't get nothing for my assault, and I didn't get no justice. That hurt so much that I come away from there and thinking, I don't think he knows what he's just done, or he don't care what he's just done, and he got away with it.
Michael Keane was given an absolute discharge, which is simply a formal record that he had committed a criminal offence. Without any restrictions or orders to stay away from his neighbours, Roger became increasingly intent on watching Mr. Keane 24/7.
I had installed on the front of our house 4 cameras, so you can see what's going on outside our property.
With his cameras up and rolling, Michael Keane and the street outside were under constant surveillance.
Whenever Mr. Keane reverses his car out, he reverses all the way down to here. There's no need for him to come down as far as he does.
He looks through our window, looks through Jane's window, laughs, looks, thinks it's great fun, and drives off. Day after day we have this with him.
Jane and Roger were convinced Michael was out to antagonise and harass them. They claim they have called the police out on multiple occasions, but they felt nothing was being done.
He would come out with a dog chain wrapped round his hand, twirling it around as if to say, you know, get out, I'm gonna get you with my dog chain.
From the fence I heard, you're a pathetic excuse for a human being. You've got no friends, nobody comes to see you.
If he was a slug, I would throw him on the floor, I would put salt round him so he explodes.
But for Michael Keane, there would soon be one complaint too many. In Whitby, 84-year-old Army veteran Philip Taylor is not going to be walked over by anyone.
Come on, chick, chick. Chick, chick.
A Yorkshireman born and bred, Philip Taylor has lived in Whitby since 1989.
I've had chickens on and off nearly all my life.
And this former soldier has had a lifelong passion for the outdoors.
From gardening to shooting, whatever else. Fishing, the same as any normal Yorkshireman would do. I don't get an egg every day, but fortunately there is one today. Breakfast is secure.
But one day in December 2013, Philip's love of nature caught the attention of his next-door neighbours, Mr. and Mrs. Webb.
I was tending my plants on the other side of this fence, just there, as I had done for the last 26 years. The Webbs came from their house, which is over there, and said I had no right to be doing what I was doing.
Philip Taylor had been planting bulbs on the Webbs' land for years.
And my reply was, are you going to throw me off? On that comment, Mrs. Webb insisted that I had to stop.
Mr. and Mrs. Webb had built their home behind Philip's in 2007 and had expanded their land by purchasing a strip of grassland that borders Philip's garden. Now what had previously been a disused strip on the other side of Philip's fence was private property.
Why they should take a fence at me trying to brighten it up, I can't understand.
But Philip had been using the land for more than just gardening. When he moved here with his wife in 1989, they liked to be able to use it to get their caravan in and out of their back garden.
This is my caravan. Had a lot of fun out of it, up into Scotland, round Whitby locally. Gets a bit sentimental because I had the wife then.
Philip's wife passed away in 1992. And although it's a few years since he used the caravan, Philip still likes to be able to access his garden through the land. But one day in 2014, the Webbs decided to do some gardening.
I came down for breakfast roughly 8 o'clock. As usual, I looked outside, my chickens and things like that, gaze as you do, and I realised that there was action taking place just beyond my caravan. and it was Mrs. Webb and her husband with a chainsaw. I walked to this position, which is the entrance to my land, and Mr. and Mrs. Webb were cutting down the branches of that tree.
Although the tree was rooted in Philip's garden, Mr. and Mrs. Webb were in fact only sawing off branches that were hanging over the fence into their land, something they are entitled to do. But when they were finished, Philip had a problem.
I had to remove them because they were my branches, belonged to me, and it was my responsibility to do it.
Tree cutting should, by law, be returned to their owner, but Philip wasn't happy.
The bag was placed here, filled to the top. There's no way could I lift that. 2 young men couldn't lift that.
For Philip, this was a declaration of war, but he was determined to fight his corner, and what he did next would have serious consequences.
They came to me and told me that I was under arrest.
Few things in life are more rewarding than moving into the house of your dreams, as William and Audrey Ferguson found out in May 2010.
We live in Goldthorne Park. It's beautiful, it's open, and the people are generally friendly.
But when that home borders a building site, the dream turns sour.
I says, look, you've took away our rights. You just squashed all our dreams. He just turned around to me and says, and just walked off.
It's not what the Fergusons had in mind when they started a life in their new house together in 2004.
Audrey's partner I've been looking for a long while. You know, one day I put the question to her, she keeps saying no, and no, and finally one day she says, okay, let's get married.
They had lived near Wolverhampton, but when their daughter Autumn came along in 2006 and they needed a family home to grow into, they didn't want to move far.
When I came through that door and I saw the garden, I said, wow, I've got some grass, and I ran up and down, all the way until night came, and when I was tired and then just went to bed.
This is perfect for her. Finally, she's got some grass. She can actually go outside.
Living next door to them was Pavita Kara and his family.
In the beginning, the relationship was good. It was friendly. It was neighborly.
Soon, Mr. Kara asked his new neighbours for a favour, and they were more than happy to help.
Mr. Kara approached us about doing some maintenance on his house and asked us if he could remove 2 of our fence panels, and we was telling him okay.
But what the Fergusons didn't know was that it wasn't just maintenance Mr. Kara had plans for.
I was standing in my garden. Mr. Kara came out and approached me and told me that he was doing an extension. I did not believe him at first because we had no paperwork from the council.
The council confirmed that their new neighbour Mr. Kara, having been refused planning permission 4 times in 5 months, had now been granted it with revisions to the plans.
Me and the wife felt really angry because we came here to settle down for peace and quiet, and then this extension was going to disturb our peace and quiet.
The Fergusons weren't the only neighbours in the street to have a problem with Mr. Kara's plans. Nalini Chudasama lives on the other side of Mr. Kara.
4 years ago, my neighbour decided he was going to build a shed at the end of his garden. I thought, that's fine, you know, it's not going to take him long, and I wanted to be a good neighbour. And since then, 4 years on, it's grown into this. It's horrible. It makes me feel sick to come here and look at that.
Meanwhile, Mr. Kara's 2-storey extension had begun.
We came out one day, we didn't realise that the extension had actually started. What he did, he pulled out all the fence posts and tossed it over on our side, and that was really, really concerning. We were both angry, but my husband, like I said, took it far worse.
And it wouldn't be long before William had an opportunity to tell Mr. Cara how he felt.
One day I was tidying up the front garden and Pav was in the garden and says, "Look, you've broken all the fence away and gone, it's all damaged, it's broken, what are you going to do about it?" And he sticks his head up towards my face and says, "I know." My emotion actually was to jump over the fence and grab hold of him, but I had to restrain myself.
We asked Pavita Cara for his version of events, and he told us that he replaced the broken fence panels and that the posts had simply fallen in the bad weather. But William and Audrey weren't happy, and as Pavita began preparing the groundwork for the big build, they became increasingly concerned.
It's actually dug underneath our foundation.
You could see the brick, and then you could see where it's digging under it. I couldn't believe when my husband was telling me.
I felt very angry when I saw the damage that is done to our foundation. I panicked because I do not know if it's going to weaken the structure of our property.
The Fergusons took photographs of Mr. Cara's excavations and wrote him a letter explaining their concerns, but he didn't reply. And when they commissioned a structural engineer's report, it stated that although Mr. Cara's foundations creeped 20 centimetres under the boundary line into their property, no damage had occurred.
You don't expect that anybody will want to dig into your castle. Digging under our foundation is not on, and we do not accept it.
Although the foundations are a metre deep and no structural damage had been done, the Fergusons were adamant that Pavita Cara should pay and started proceedings to sue him for damages. The Fergusons' dreams of a happy family home were looking increasingly doubtful.
Now the gap between our property and his is like inches.
Coming up, pensioner Michael Keane is at it again.
He was kicking his legs out, kicked one of the officers.
And police intervene.
They insisted that they took my shotguns.
When William and Audrey Ferguson's next-door neighbour, Pavita Cara, started excavating the groundwork for a two-storey extension, their hearts sank. But it wasn't just what was going on underground that they were unhappy about.
Well, naturally, building work usually make a lot of noise. We could hear like bees, zzz, and then there was hammering, but very annoying indeed it was. It was morning, noon, and night. It was even on weekends. I remember one night we was putting in his front window. It was 9:30, and I was thinking, well, you know, it's even past the watershed. It was difficult to rest, made relationship in the household tight because William worked shifts and he's shouting and grumpy at everybody, and my daughter suffered the worst for it.
And it wasn't just the noise that was alarming. The build wasn't looking like it was going to be finished anytime soon.
One single builder was doing all the work. I thought there'd be a group of builders doing it, and then every day I come from work and notice this is one chap labouring away, and it was just one day he comes, he does it for a couple of days, and he comes another day and he just drags on and on and on and on.
Even their garden was affected by Mr. Cara's big build.
We started finding a lot of building materials in our garden, you name it, bricks, cement bags, plastics, nails, screws, tiles. As soon as we removed the bits of rubble and everything, the next day it all started over again.
And Nalini, living on the other side of Mr. Cara, was also finding life difficult.
One of the main problems that I have with Mr. Cara is that he uses his drum that you see along here to burn his building material, and that has been ongoing for the last 5 years. It's not garden rubbish or wastes or anything like that. It's whatever it is, carpets, plastic, cardboard, anything and everything, and there's just no consideration.
Pavita Cara claims that he tries to be considerate and only burns rubble in a closed fire up to 4 times a year. But for his neighbours, life was becoming unbearable.
Nobody's going to want to buy this house looking at that monstrosity next door to us.
After a fight involving half the street, Roger Coleman had his neighbour, Mr. Keane, and the street outside his home under surveillance.
After Jane's assault, I wasn't happy for the security of myself and my wife.
Roger's new cameras were now rolling 24/7.
I came out to sweep the drive as there was quite a few leaves around, and I suddenly heard this car behind me backed all the way down the road across the drive. And I thought, what? Oh, here he comes again. He stopped level with our drive, right across the drive. I said, oh, this is it. And I went out with the broom in my hand and looked at him as he drove off.
But Michael Keane saw things a little differently.
A few hours later, I get a phone call from the police to say I chased him down the road with a broom. Absolute total lie.
Mr. Keane declined to take part in this film, but he told us that this was just one example of the harassment he has been made the victim of at the hands of Roger Coleman. Roger told us that after this incident, the police looked at both his and Mr. Keane's CCTV footage and decided to take no further action.
How can a man be like this, do this harassment to everybody? How can he still be getting away with it? It's absolutely disgusting.
Fortunately, Roger had compiled enough evidence for the police. And in 2014, Michael Keane pleaded guilty to 3 counts of harassment. He was issued with a 2-year antisocial behaviour order protecting Roger and Jane and their families from any threatening or insulting behaviour. He was also ordered not to use noise-generating equipment outside the bounds of his own property or loiter outside Roger's house.
The police have been absolutely fantastic. They've come when there's been an incident, they've taken statements, and they've been very good.
The neighbours hoped their troubles would be over.
He just wants to wind people up, because that's the sort of person he is.
But before long, trouble struck again.
On a Monday, we always pick our grandson up from the local school. So about 3:10, I went off in a sports car and collected him. And on my way back, I saw Mr. Keane's silver Range Rover coming towards me. Suddenly, unexpectedly, he turned and drove across my side of the road and back again, which made me brake. I could have easily, no roof on, could have easily ended up in the field, and both of us could have lost our lives. When I got home, I phoned 101 and reported the incident.
After listening to Roger's complaint about Mr. Keane's driving, more police officers arrived to speak to him.
As soon as I saw the 2 police cars arrive, I thought I'd come out and have a look and see what was going on. And when I got to here, I looked round the corner and I saw the 3 police officers knocking on his door. After that, I went inside and watched it on the CCTV.
The police were about to see Michael Keane's explosive behaviour firsthand.
I saw him bring Mr. Keane out onto the drive. I asked him to come quietly, but he obviously wasn't very happy about that.
The situation soon spiralled out of control.
There was a struggle, and then suddenly he just seemed to want to get away from them, and they jumped on top of him, on top of the bonnet of the car, and he was kicking his legs out, kicked one of the officers, and then they eventually put handcuffs on him and took him away.
Michael Keane factually disputes all his neighbours' allegations and insists his neighbours are in fact picking on him.
He picks on everybody. He don't care who they are. He's got away with it for so long. All we want to do is to live in this neighbourhood peacefully, quietly and happily, and we can't do that with him in the corner.
Although Roger's alleged road rage incident wasn't actioned, Michael Keane was charged with assaulting a police sergeant before being released on bail. But any hopes of peace and quiet in Little Blakenham were still a long way off. One person who refused to back down was 84-year-old former soldier Philip Taylor.
I've had guns since the age of 14. And of course in the army I was considered a marksman.
Philip had locked horns with his neighbours, Mr. and Mrs. Webb.
Their behaviour is completely out of order.
Mr. and Mrs. Webb are police officers with the local Whitby force and knew by law the branches they had cut from the tree belonged to Philip. But they left them in front of Philip's caravan. He wasn't happy.
I immediately wrote a few words asking when they were going to remove it.
Philip stood firm in his refusal to move the branches himself and decided on a more aggressive tactic.
Just to prove a point that I had a right of access into my own property, I decided that I would park my car on their land.
Despite having his own drive, Philip used his neighbour's land as a car park for the next 6 weeks. But soon, there would be a problem.
I came back from Whitby town to find Mr. and Mrs. Webb with 2 or 3 other men laying big boulders. They put them there to stop me bringing my car onto the land. The boulders were laid up to that point then, so I drove round, just parked my car here on the grass as usual in front of my own entrance in protest. Went in, had breakfast, came back out to find that the whole of the area had been, boulders had been placed round it. They'd locked me in. They'd locked me in completely.
But things were about to get much worse for Philip.
I picked up this hammer, walked over to that rock and swung it, cracking it. After striking that rock 3 times, a piece came off. That was my intention and I was quite pleased to see it happen.
But before long, the police arrived on the scene.
The police arrived and told me that I was under arrest and that I would be taken to Scarborough police station. They would handcuff me.
Philip was arrested for criminal damage and driven 20 miles to Scarborough police station for questioning.
They introduced me to this cell, which they locked me up in, took my shoes from me, everything else. I can't say that I was frightened, ever frightened. It was all a joke.
After 24 hours in custody, Philip was released on bail and allowed to return home under the condition that he didn't contact the Webbs.
Knowing that I had a gun licence, they insisted that they took my shotguns, which I kept locked up safely in this cupboard. They just stated that they had a right to do so because of the situation.
Do you think you're a danger with the guns? Do you think that's why?
I've never been considered a danger with a gun by any authority.
5 weeks later, Philip was given a caution. We asked the Webbs to comment on these events, but they haven't got back to us. Philip's behaviour, however, did make news, and he now believes he has support.
An awful lot of people just consider them an eyesore. In fact, somebody's painting the rocks now.
And even though the rocks and the land legally belong to the Webbs, Philip remains undeterred.
I've always used the land, and As far as I'm concerned, it's just open ground with access into the back of my property.
Coming up, Michael Keane's reign of terror continues.
But I'm on edge all the time when I'm out there.
And there's no way out for the Fergusons.
Nobody's going to want to buy this house looking at that monstrosity next door to us.
In Wolverhampton, the Fergusons' next-door neighbour's house extension was causing them big problems.
It was morning, noon and night. It was even on weekends. And then there was hammering.
He uses his drum to burn his building material, carpets, plastic, anything and everything.
Their neighbour, Pavita Kara, had gained the appropriate permission from the council for his two-storey extension before the Fergusons had moved in. But his neighbours weren't happy about it.
I just thought that it was very, very unprofessional. And in fact, it made me fear for our own safety and the safety of our property.
Pavita Kara claims that enforcement officers have checked his site and are happy with the build. But after 4 years of building work, things haven't improved for his neighbours.
This is what we have to live with every day.
This is Mr. Kara's two-storey extension, which he's been allowed to build, unfinished again.
It's not nice. It's not a neat work. It's just shabby work. It hasn't been done professionally, and it's untidy. Before I could walk down with no problem.
Now the gap between our property and his is like, we're talking inches. We couldn't paint, we couldn't get any scaffoldings in between the gap. There's no way we can get to maintain our property.
And that's not all.
Actually blocked out. Natural sunlight used to come and used to light up the conservatory. Our kitchen light's going to be on 24 hours a day near enough, because once we turn the light off, it's actually dark in our kitchen.
Both of Mr. Kara's neighbours want to sell up and leave, but they claim it's not as easy as that.
Nobody's going to want to buy this house looking at that monstrosity next door to us.
I decided to put the house up for sale, but the way that the property looked from the outside was putting other buyers off, really. They didn't, they couldn't envisage living next to a building site, basically.
The Fergusons were at a loss.
Emotionally, there was a bit of tension between my husband and I, based on, obviously, the stresses. You can't even come into your own place and say, yes, I can close my door and leave the outside out. But inside, suddenly somebody's digging inside and squirming inwards, and there's no relaxation.
The Fergusons' hopes are now resting on suing Pavita Kara in court for damages, which they feel are worth around £25,000.
Over the years, we've spent like on 3 surveyors, solicitors' fee, between £6,000 and £7,000. I do know the court case will come to about £20,000, so we're looking at about £27,000. We've got no choice. We're just going to go to the right channels and let the court decide one way or the other, always in the right and always in the wrong.
Pavita Kara insists he has done nothing wrong. William and Audrey are hoping to go to court later this year. Roger Coleman and his neighbours in Little Blakenham had had enough of their 71-year-old neighbour, Michael Keane.
He just wants aggravation all the time.
Although Michael Keane claims that it's his neighbours who are harassing him, it was he who had been arrested for assaulting a police sergeant. According to the neighbours, though, things didn't calm down. He made comments and sang strange songs at them.
It's not nice to listen to, it's pathetic. It's not in tune, it's nothing. He's just standing behind his gate saying, I'm HAPPY, for no reason whatsoever but to provoke us neighbours. He's a stupid, stupid old man. Every time we come home, he's there watching us on his camera. We get out of our car, take shopping to our house. He's constantly there shouting out abuse at us. How can anybody live round here like that? We all pack up and move just because of him? Why should we?
Roger and Jane held their breath as Michael Keane appeared in court facing charges of resisting a police sergeant and assaulting a police sergeant. Added to those were charges of harassment towards some of the neighbours. Michael Keane pleaded not guilty to all charges, but was found guilty on all counts. He was sent home with an £820 fine.
He got away with everything he did. He should have been punished. And I don't think he's ever going to stop harassing us neighbours until he's dead.
Michael Keane, however, claims that Jane and Roger have lied and that he and his wife have endured nearly 2 years of harassment from them.
I'm on edge all the time when I'm out there because I think he's going to come out, he's going to start, and someone's going to do something. And that is exactly what he wants us to do.
Barbara's health has deteriorated. Not sleeping all that well. It's all part of the problem of having him as a neighbour.
He makes life misery for people here, and all we want is a quiet life.
We like the little village. No, we're all going to stay. If anybody moves, it will be him, and we're staying here. And that's it as far as I'm concerned.
Michael Keane maintains that he and his wife are the victims of their neighbours' harassment. The residents of this quiet street continue to live uncomfortably, side by side. Have you got a nightmare neighbour story? Get in touch at channel5.com/nightmare neighbour.
And if you missed last week's Nightmare Neighbour, it's next door on 5 Star in just a tick. Meanwhile, here on Channel 5, after a big night at a notorious Hollywood club, tragedy unfolds for one young 90s movie star. Don't miss new Autopsy. Last hours of River Phoenix, next.